right, let's begin this week's show by bringing on a couple of authors from Western New York who have a new book out called Leo Lyons. I got a copy of it right here. It's called Leo Lyons, the Rochester Jeffersons, and the Birth of the NFL. Welcome to the show, Jeff Miller and John Steffenhagen. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
Thank you.
All right. John, the last time I saw you, or Adam and I saw you, we were in a graveyard in Rochester, New York, standing by the final resting place of your great-grandfather, who is the subject of this book that you wrote.
Yes, that was quite happenstance. I just happened to be walking the cemetery. But no, that was the final resting place of Leo Lyons. And yeah.
Now I had told you we were going to be in the area, and we said we were going to be visiting his grave, and you were like, "Hey, let me know when you're going to be there, and I'll show up." And you did, and we might not have found his grave right away if we hadn't seen your car sitting there by it. So we want to thank you for that. But this book is, I think, is going to change the way a lot of people think about the early days of the NFL. And Jeff, I'm going to start with you.
Sure.
How long were the two of you guys researching this book?
Well, I'll give props to John on that one. He's been researching Leo's life for the last 20 years. But we started this collaboration about 3.5 years ago, and there was still a lot of research left to do, but it was pretty intense. There was, we wanted to really dig deep and tell the story of the early pro game and the founding of the NFL from a different perspective, and that would be Leo's. So 3.5 years of intensive collaboration.
Wow. John, I know that you spent a lot of time researching Leo and all that, but is there more to Leo's story than what's in the book? I mean, I just assume that you're finding out new things every day. Is there going to be like a sequel, or what's next in the story of Leo Lyons?
There could be a sequel for sure, because I mean, yeah, there were a lot of stories that were not put in the book because Jeff, who had the foresight in saying, we're not going to just put something on there of just Leo jotted something down. We're not just going to take that, put it in the book. I mean, maybe, who knows? So everything had to be factual. Everything had to have a backup to its fact, which was it was very aggravating during it. I don't know how many times I was so mad at him, and he was so mad at me, and I would search for months of something, and he'd be like, "Okay, here, Jeff, I got." Well, what about? Did you check this? I'm like, no, and it would be so bad. And he's like, we can't use that for the book. I'm like, why? This is an incredible story. Nope, it's not backed up. We can't do it. So it was a big give and take, but I always told him like a week later, I'd be like, I thank you for being that way, because I agree. I don't want to just put something out there that's just something scribbled on a page. Okay, we're going to go with it.
Yeah, one of my questions was how you guys collaborate. Sorry, Jeff. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, the one thing I wanted to make sure, because as you guys know, we know a lot of historians and we know a lot of authors in the PFRA and around the country. And if we get anything wrong, somebody's going to find out, or somebody's going to see it. So I wanted to make sure that we told a story that was perfectly airtight, and I think we did. If that's why, I would aggravate John. I'd be writing, and I'd say, okay, well, I came across this fact or this note, but I'm not sure if Leo wrote it, at the time, if he wrote it later, he just scribbled it down, or if it was completely accurate. So I'd go to John with it. He'd get aggravated because I need more. But he was, when it came to research, anytime I came across something, he would find a way to back it up. He would find a note, a newspaper article, an NFL meeting minutes, something. John was the best. He is the best researcher I've ever worked with, without question. And it was really, it really allowed us to create a story that was, like I said, 100% accurate.
Well, that kind of answers one of my other questions. I was going to ask you how was it working together, the two of you, and I was going to ask who really handled what in the collaboration.
It was just the both of us just back and forth, constant text and messaging and phone calls, and every now and then we'd meet up at a restaurant or something and talk over everything. But it was really tough. It was a lot of sending documents and stuff, and oh, this isn't clear enough. And he's like, I just need one more little bit of that story. And I'd be like, I don't have it. I'd like the end of the page got cut off. He's like, well, go look, and there's hundreds and hundreds of these documents in these boxes. So I'd go back through. My wife's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I gotta look through. He needs a name or something. And I'd come back and I'd go, I'm sorry, I don't have it. I feel like he was aggravated at me, but it's almost like you're doing a story, but it's like, okay, don't leave me hanging here. I need to know. And I'm like, I just don't have it. And so there's a couple of the stories that it goes on good, but then it stops because we just simply don't know, and we're not going to guess what happened. So it's left at that. It didn't happen a lot, but it did happen, and it was very aggravating.
Yeah, and I think the major stories or the major events within the book, we were able to flesh out completely, like the NFL first meeting or the founding of the Hall of Fame or a particular game, a road trip or something. We really got a lot of great information that I think is kind of missing from other accounts of the early NFL. So,
oh yeah, I was going to say one of the weird ones was like the paint store, for instance. I had, for 20 years, I've been in search of Leo, going through every single newspaper. So I thought, I had a good grip on everything. And then during the process of the book writing, I got up in the middle of the night. I couldn't sleep. I was like constantly researching, like 24 hours. I would go without sleep. I got into it so bad. You get on a trail of something, then you go on it. But one morning I get up at 3:30 in the morning. I get on there, and for some reason I just put the right combination of words in newspapers.com, either Leo, paint, Rochester, and then something else. But I find in a small newspaper article in 1933 showing Leo opening this paint store. And not only was it just a paint store, it was the first superstore of hardware and paint. And it was state of the art. And it was like, and that's where, in the book, I don't want to give too much away, but somebody in the NFL helps him start this business, because I was like, where he didn't have the money to do this, and just things like that would come out of nowhere. And it's like, okay, now I know this story. And then that would lead me to going through Chicago papers and finding out stuff in there. And just a lot of weeks and months were just spent on, I was praying that I wasn't going down, like spending all this time for nothing. But it usually would always lead to something. And it was amazing. I mean, thank God he was in the paper all the time, because I wouldn't have been able to find all this, everything.
Yeah. Now Leo was like the first historian for the NFL in the early days, and he collected a lot of memorabilia, and he made a lot of very specific notes on who gave this item to him, and so that really helped in your research, didn't it? But you still had to go back and double check and confirm a lot of these things.
Yeah, that was the thing that you would see. I had 3 inventory lists, I think, overall, but I just had one original one, and some of the things that I possessed and some of the things I didn't. But yeah, as I would go through, and then, we'd have a date for a certain game, and I'm like, all right, let me go back and make sure that they played that team on that date. And it matched up, and it was just again, time consuming. Like, months would go by like just nonstop. But yeah, it was very interesting finding out the things that he had.
So one question I had, before Randy gets another one out there, is of 2 great researchers. I know you guys do a lot of hard work. What is maybe one nugget specifically that, I mean, you were told about the store, but what's a nugget that you guys really were caught aback by throughout researching for this book?
Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I think there are 3, and a couple of them are pretty prominent. One is that basically the idea of football trading cards modeled after the baseball was Leo's idea. They didn't start manufacturing cards until the mid 30s, but he was talking about creating trading cards as early as 1916. This is before the NFL is even born, and John has the documentation to show this. And then there's, later on in the mid-20s, there's another document where Leo actually has stapled a baseball card to a piece of paper and has the diagrams of what these football cards would look like. So he was constantly pitching this to the NFL, or the guys, Joe Carr and George Halas, who would tell him, we don't have the money to do this kind of thing right now. The next thing was the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We have letters, again, John has letters from 1931, and throughout the 30s where Leo's asking, the Green Bay Packers or the Chicago Bears, send me documents, send me, programs, send me old photographs. I'm collecting this stuff. And in 1936, there's a letter from Joe Carr to Leo saying, I love your idea about establishing the museum for football, Pro Football Hall of Fame. We just don't have the money to do that right now. So that was Leo's idea. And the third thing was the Red Grange, the signing of Red Grange. He tried to sign Red Grange, and that there's a whole story about how that goes down. And he details the entire journey from, going out to Wheaton, Illinois, and meeting with Doc Cooley and Red Grange's father, and, getting the, how he raised the money. He was going to pay, he offered Reg $5,000 a game. And John has the canceled check. He has the check registry where it says who gave him the money for the check, and I'll let John reveal that if he wants to. But the whole thing about how he traveled to the Morrison Hotel in Chicago to try to sign Grange, but he was already sequestered in a room with Dutch Sterneman and George Halas. It's a fascinating story, and it might be my favorite story in the whole book because Leo gives such detail in his journal. So, John, I don't know if you want to give the rest away, but
I'll give a little bit. I mean, as far as that, working on the Grange thing there, I mean, I had originally just known, George Halas mentions in his autobiography that Leo was there at the Morrison Hotel to try to sign him, but we took him. But I didn't, these things, now say, for instance, that check he's talking about and these other notes, these things came from aunts and uncles who I would pester them nonstop to go through their attic, go through these boxes. But a lot of them were older, and I don't think they could probably physically do it. So they would have, get family members, and I would offer. We both offered Jeff. We were like, we'll come down. One of them was in Washington D.C., who ended up giving me the trophy. But all these things were in their boxes, long forgotten from their parents, and so it would take months, years. And then these documents would show up. So at one point, my uncle died, and my aunt says, my sister was here. She was going through my stuff, and she found a big folder. It says Leo on it, And then they're not football fans, so they would send it to me, and I open it up, and I'm just like, is this real? I'm almost thinking like this is a fake. Like this can't be real. All these things, like the canceled check. So I didn't even want to tell Jeff at first. I'm like, I got to make, like, maybe somebody in the family's making these things up. Like, who knows? So I start researching the name on the check. It says Frank Boscarino. Well, researching through there, I find out that Frank Boscarino was Rochester's biggest mobster during 1920, right at the time Grange, 2025. And it would have his address. I mean, there was like things where nobody could make it up. It was like details that weren't even on the internet, but I had known just that was out there. But it was like, that's how a lot of these things were. And it just nonstop. So I would say the biggest surprise, I think, was the cards, because again, in those things that I got were the actual blueprints with the old paper that was literally falling apart in my hands. Here he's got literally the dimensions, and he's talking about how it's so stupid. And this is like 1916. He's like, the NFL, this is or pre-NFL, I'd say probably like 1919. He's saying to people, or he's writing in his journal notes, like, why don't we cater to kids? Because kids like to collect the cards. You have the tobacco cards, which are so popular, and then finally Cracker Jack came out. But Rochester had George Eastman, and they had Chiclets, the American Chicle Company, both right down the street from his house. So he had met, and I ended up going through newspapers. oh, I find a little article, George Eastman meets with Leo. It would be like that, and it would be literally like I'm reading a book, researching this, and it's just mind-boggling, and it's just crazy. And that's basically Leo's life. It's just like these little chunks all throughout, but it's pretty amazing.
Now, the Rochester Jeffersons football team was founded what year? When did they start playing?
1898.
1898. Okay, and Leo actually played on the team. Like a couple of years later, he joined the team or something like that.
1908, he joined the team as a 16-year-old.
Okay, and then the NFL came along, and Leo was the owner of the team by that time, and he was there at the meeting in Ralph Hayes' Hupmobile dealership that founded the NFL, and the Jeffersons became one of the founding members of the NFL through what, 1926, I think it was.
Yes.
So 20 to
They
26.
played through 1925.
25 was the final season.
Okay. And then from there on, Leo's life just he stayed around the NFL, even though he wasn't an owner and didn't have the team anymore. And that's kind of what I think is so fascinating. But I wanted to ask, is there one bit of memorabilia that you found in all your research from all the boxes that he had, things that he had accumulated, that you kind of prize above everything else? A physical thing that he's left behind?
Yeah, I think the trophy, I guess, the trophy, because there's so many pictures of Leo holding that trophy, and then going back to my childhood when I was a little kid, there it is, being at his house, and that's the trophy that I have now has lost its luster. It doesn't shine like it does in the picture. But as a baby, my mom said I would be over at Leo's house, and I was always drawn to the trophy because it would sit on a mantle. It was bright and shiny. So Leo would hold me and the trophy. And how ironic, 100 years later, I have it sitting in my living room. And it's like, the coincidence is pretty cool.
Wow. Yeah, Jeff, you sent us several pictures, and we've shown two of them here. I thought maybe we'd show the other pictures and have you explain what we're looking at in those pictures.
Sure.
The first one, I think, was the team from 1915.
1915. And this one's interesting because the first year they wore the Jeffs jerseys. And it's also, if you, in the second row, or in the middle row, third from the left, is Henry McDonald, who is the fourth known African-American professional football player. And Leo is in the middle row, kneeling all the way over to the right. But it's, this is the Jeffs logo that's, I actually have it on my shirt.
Right, yeah.
And it's the first known professional logo, or first known logo used by a professional football team.
Okay. Let's look at some of the other pictures, Adam.
All right.
That is the Johnson & Johnson first aid kit that was gifted to Leo. Leo had approached George Eastman, who was the head of Eastman Kodak back in the day, and asked him for money to help support the team, to sponsor the team. But Eastman wasn't taking him very seriously, and he said, "Listen, I'm not going to give you any money." He was giving money to the arts and the medical schools and stuff like that. He gave away millions of dollars. Eastman was a well-known philanthropist, but he didn't think professional football had a future. He didn't think it had any value. He said, but what I'll do is I'm going to give you this first aid kit. And at the time, that was the state-of-the-art first aid kit. It was really, pretty fancy. It's got drawers, and actually this is still in John's possession. It's got a lot of the medicines and things like that still in the drawers. It was state-of-the-art, and Leo used that for the first 6 years of the National Football League, and it was stolen on a number of occasions, and they had to chase down people and beat them up to get it back. But it's a great artifact.
Okay.
That's the certificate, the membership certificate from 1923 for the Rochester Jeffersons from the National Football League.
Okay.
This is one of my favorite pieces in John's possession. This is a page from the Saturday Evening Post on which Leo wrote notes on his way and during the organizational meeting in Canton on September 17th, 1920. So if you look real close, you'll see little notations about like different rules that they were talking about, or who was there, who was standing next to whom. And it's again, to me, it's one of the more fascinating elements of this story, that Leo is telling the story of the founding from a perspective other than George Halas. We always hear about, everybody seems to want to go back and cite George Halas because he wrote a biography and he talked about the league meeting.
Right.
But Leo gives a completely different perspective and tells you, who had the cigars and, how many times the police knocked on the door and they almost got thrown in the hoot cow. So it was pretty fascinating. This is Polo Grounds, 1925. John, what day was this? Wasn't this a holiday?
Armistice Day.
Armistice Day. So this is the Jeffersons against the Giants, and this is the Jeffersons are on defense in this picture. We haven't identified who the players are, though.
Okay. And those are all the pictures. I mean, we can just circle back to that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's Leo around 1970. He's holding the 1916 New York State Championship trophy. And the football, John, is that the one from 1921?
Nope, that's not the one I've got. That's the one at the Hall of Fame. That's the New York Giants ball. I'm sure of it. I've studied it for so many years. Right where the ball, the seam comes down, where you got the laces, and then it has this huge dip that goes down and then back up. Mm-hmm. You can see it literally on the ball there, and the one at the Hall of Fame has the same spot. So I believe that's the one where the Jeffersons played the Giants. It said it was from the Giants' opening season, so that would be correct.
So that would have been 25. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, John, I wanted to ask you. You were in a movie about Triangle Park. It was called Triangle Park. It was about the very first NFL game, and you actually played Leo Lyons in this movie. What was that like playing your great grandfather?
That was weird for sure. Because somebody else was actually slated to do it, and then at the last minute they contacted me. They're like, "You want to play?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So yeah, it was very neat. I mean, it never was really. It didn't go hit. It was supposed to be on Amazon and Amazon Prime. It never got released, but it was very neat. It was really cool to be him.
All right, I've got a question for both of you here. What is your favorite part of the book? Let's start with Jeff. What's your favorite part of the book?
For me, it's not really one particular episode. I mean, like I love the Red Grange story, and I love the story of the founding. But to me, it's the detail. Like I said, you don't see that kind of detail in these oral histories. This, he talks about, we got on board the New York Central at 8:00 and sat in for the 8-hour train ride to Canton. He talks about what hotel they stayed in, where they practiced, in the lobby, just everything. I mean, there's so much detail that for Leo, and to me, that was telling the story with that much detail just really brings it to life, because it's detail we don't have anywhere else. I just think that's a really special element to the story.
Yeah, and I think with like when I talked to Joe Horrigan back when we were at the PFRA meeting in Canton, 2020, or I can't remember when it was exactly, but the thing that amazed me the most is that the story really is about a kid who is totally obsessed with making a pro, like he had written a pro football league and him having a team in this pro league when there wasn't one. And I think, you see it as you're following his notes and everything, his journal, that he literally has a plan. I mean, it's not like, just some kid. I mean, he's literally working on doing it. And you can see the process, being the state champ or the city champions first. Then I'm explaining why I got to get these players from around, the state. Then he gets all the good players from the state, wins the state championship in 1960. And then literally, because I've had a lot of people go, well, yeah, he was in that organizational meeting, but he was an outsider. It's like, no, he wasn't actually, because in 1916, he had contacted Jim Thorpe, not George Halas, but other guys out there out west, and he wanted to be part of it. And then that's why he challenged Jim Thorpe and Jack Kuzak, the Canton Bulldogs, because he knew that he had to make a thing for himself. So it was actually a lot of ball busting in that game. And literally, Leo was the one who came up and said, "We're going to come out there and kick your ass." I mean, that was something that gentlemen didn't do back then. And then to show how it reciprocated, it was known that Jim Thorpe was behind when the Jeffersons got to the field in Canton. There were stretchers along the bench, the Jeffersons bench, and they had done that and then people from the stands were hollering, "Yeah, that's what happened the last time. Two guys played against Jim Thorpe. They were carried off in stretchers." And so there was a lot going on. So it's interesting to me that what he did to get there. He was really a nobody, but to come from Rochester, New York, little Rochester, to be out in the Ohio League, it fascinates me.
Cool. All right, last question, and this goes to both of you. We'll start with you, Jeff. Should Leo Lyons be in the Hall of Fame?
I've never been one to say, "Oh, so-and-so got screwed," because, to me, it's like, it doesn't make any never minds to me if Otis Taylor or Alex Karras or Butch Bird is in the Hall of Fame. I want them all to be in the Hall of Fame. But after writing this book and looking at the first and the accomplishments and the things that Leo did, like I said, whether it's football cards, being a founder, being an owner, being the first historian of the league, the Hall of Fame, all that stuff, I think in totality, I think he's got a really good argument. I know a lot of people are pushing for Ralph Hay, but as far as I'm concerned, Ralph Hay did one thing. He held a meeting. Leo Lyons did a ton of things, and I don't really believe that we were trying to get him into the Hall of Fame with this book, but after writing it, I'm convinced that if anybody belongs there, it's him. I mean, the Hall of Fame was his idea. You should at least put the Godfather of Hall of Fame into the Hall of Fame. So yeah, I'm going to say yes.
Okay, John.
Me, I don't know. I can see both sides of it. So I don't know what part of me is the family part talking or not, but I don't think so. I think he doesn't even fit the mold of a Hall of Fame. He just is like, there's nobody like him. Nobody spent a childhood to the day he died involved in the NFL. I mean, every Joe Horrigan, Bob Carroll, historian, he wrote in his article, Bob Carroll, that if it was getting into the Hall of Fame was based on loyalty, putting your life into it, then Leo would have been the very first man put into the Hall of Fame. So it is. I mean, I know George Halas and Art Rooney were very for getting him in, and Jack Mara from the Giants, but I think there was also opposition from the new guys coming in that, they didn't know Leo, they didn't care about Leo. So, but I would say I don't know. I can't say either way.
Well, maybe after enough people read your book, they might come to the same conclusion that Leo Lyons, in my opinion, does deserve to be in the Hall of Fame because of all the contributions that he made to the early days of the NFL, and that he stayed with the NFL for so many years. I mean, you've got pictures of him during the Hall of Fame parade and those sorts of things, and he was just everywhere. So
a Forrest Gump kind of character, definitely.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Well, there's a picture of the book, Leo Lyons, the Rochester Jeffersons, and the Birth of the NFL. Jeff Miller, John Steffenhagen, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you, Randy. Anytime.